Hi, I'm Kevin Dean, and in about 2001 I released an album, compilation album of comedy by a friend of mine, Charlie Smithers, the Cockney king of comedy. And the material was taken from various albums of his, vinyl albums from the 1970s, 1980s, and put it together and released it onto CD back then. And then I deleted the CD after 2 or 3 years. I felt it ran its course, people had obtained it, and that was the end of it. And Charlie is no longer with us. For some years he hasn't been with us. So I thought, here we are, 2024, let's re-release past King Rat, Cockney King of Comedy, Charlie Smithers, for people to enjoy for free on YouTube and Facebook and all those platforms. So, enjoy.
Charlie Smithers speaking. Firstly, thank you for buying the CD. It's my 50th year in show business, and I'm looking back over the years, providing laughter for millions. So here we go with memories of the past. Enjoy it. Thank you.
I was sitting having a drink in this pub. There was a fella sitting there. The young girl come in. He said, "Would you like a drink, love?" She said, "Vodka and tonic." Bought her vodka and tonic. The evening wore on. The pub was about to close. He said, "Could I see you home, love?" She said, "Certainly." Walked home, got to her door. She said, "Would you like to come in for a cup of tea?" Got indoors, sat down. She made him a cup of tea, was drinking the tea. A little bit of a noise outside. Oh, she said, "For God's sake, Ard, it's my husband, come home early." He said, "You never told me you was married." She said, "I never had the heart to after 7 vodka and tonics." He said, "What am I supposed to do?" She said, "Hide, he's a violent man." He said, "Where can I hide?" She said, "Get in the wardrobe." So he got in the wardrobe and he's standing in the wardrobe frightened out of his life. All of a sudden a voice in the wardrobe said, "And it's dark in here." He looked down, there was a little kid sitting there. He said, "What are you doing in here?" He said, "I'm hiding, aren't I?" He said, "Well, be quiet." He said, "I will if you give me £10 to buy a teddy bear." He said, "You get no £10 off of me." He said, "I'll get out and tell my dad you're in here." He thought, "I better give it to him." Finally, Dad went out. He got out the wardrobe, run home as quick as he could. When Dad come home, the kid was sitting there with a big teddy bear. He said, "Where'd you get that teddy bear?" He said, "A nice man gave me £10 to buy it." He said, "You've done nothing but tell bloody lies for a fortnight. Now get round to confessions." Round the kid went to confessions, sitting in the confession box all on his own. And he said, "And it's dark in here." And the voice said, "Bloody hell, not you again." Which is... But you know, funny things happen, because I was in the same pub. And being in the same pub, you get strange things happen. When it was 11 o'clock, the governor looked at me. He said, "Would you like to hang on and have a couple? We're having a bit of a party." Now, if you stay in a pub in London to 2:30, when you come out of that pub, you feel that you can beat the world. Hope someone picks on me tonight. An hour went by, I never saw a soul. So I thought, there's no trouble about it. They've heard about me. I thought, I've got to find a bit of trouble. I'll take a shortcut through the cemetery. Might be a bit of trouble in there. I am walking through the cemetery, singing at the top of my voice, "Have you ever caught your..." Because I know some good songs, you know. I was really enjoying it. And as I'm walking through the cemetery, I've heard a noise. Frightened the life out of me, it went. I stopped singing, and I went all stiff. And I ain't been like that for years. Always go stiff when I'm frightened. All of a sudden, heard it again, it went. Oh, I was so frightened, I ran for my life. I was so stiff, I fell over. I never hurt my nose. So I fell on my hands, see? And when I got up, I was still stiff. I thought, thank God for that. Because that meant I was still frightened, see? All of a sudden, heard it again, it went. And I sort of half turned. And when I looked, there was a fella sitting there, had hammer and a chisel, banging on a tombstone. I went half annoyed. I said, "You frightened the bloody life out of me." I said, "What are you doing at 4:30 in the morning?" He looked at me, he said, "They spelt my name wrong." I haven't been in there since, and I won't be going back anymore either. I like them sort of places, do you? Incredible situations, aren't they? There was an interview on television, and the announcer, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to welcome our next guest, who comes all the way from Poland." So he said, "Good evening, sir." He said, "Yeah, Voss, good evening to you." He said, "It's very nice of you to be in Britain." "Yeah, Voss, nice to be here." He said, "Well, we've invited you along," he said, "because in Poland you are a very famous man." What is that, shooting in the audience? He said, "In Poland you are a very famous man." He said, "Yeah, I was famous." He said, "When I walk about in Poland, I hear people say, 'God blimey, he's famous.'" He said, "Well, that's wonderful, sir." He said, "The reason you're famous," he said, "during the war, you was a fighter pilot." He said, "Yeah, I was fighter pilot in the war." He said, "We understand you shot down 42 German aircraft." "Yeah, I was shooting down 42 German aircraft." Bloody good, eh? He said, "It's absolutely marvellous for one man to shoot down 42 German aircraft." "Yeah," he said, "it was not too bad." He said, "Well, it must have been a dangerous job." "Yeah, it was dangerous. Sometimes I say to myself, 'God blimey, this is dangerous.'" He said, "Would you like to tell the television viewers of one of your most dangerous moments?" He said, "Yeah, I must tell them. I never forget. Was in the summer of 1941. I'm sitting in my Spitfires. I got my joysticks in my hand. And I say to myself, what a beautiful morning. But I'm speaking too soon. Because I happen to look out of my starboard window and I see these two Fokkers. So straight away I say to myself, what are these Fokkers doing here, you see? Because it's most unusual, because we don't usually get Fokkers in this area, you see? But I'm a famous fighter pilot. I say, let the Fokkers come, I don't care. But I'm looking out of the window, and I say to myself, why are the Fokkers not attacking? And I realize why. When I look in my other window, I got two more Fokkers on the other side. So I say to myself, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it is four Fokkers onto one here. Well, I wait for them to attack, but I look in my rear mirror, there's two more Fokkers behind me then. Well, quite naturally, the interviewer got a bit worried. He said, excuse me butting in, sir. He said, but before we do get complaints, what you obviously mean is the German Fokker-Wulf aircraft. He said, yeah, that is right, but these Fokkers was Messerschmitts. This dear old chap, I was talking to him, he said, 50 years, you know, I've been on the same firm. I said, what have you been doing, sir? On the railways, haven't I? 50 years I've served. I said, oh, that's marvellous. He said, yeah, get my gold watch next week. So the following week, they presented him with his gold watch. And of course, one of the governors said to him, well, thank you very much, you've been a good servant to the railway. He said, is there anything we can do for you? He said, well, me and the wife, he said, you know what I mean? He said, I've loved the railways all my life. He said, we would like to buy an old railway coach, he said, and have it took down the country and live in it. He said, and give me the memory of the railway. He said, we'll have that done for you. So they got a coach and they took it right down the countryside where he wanted it, and there he had it in his little field, and him and his wife lived there. Well, about 3 months passed by, and all his mates at work said, let's go down and see old Jim and his missus. We've got a free pass. And they all arrived there, and when he got to the field, they see old Jim in the field, and he's pushing the railway coach up the bloody end of the field. Then he went up the other end, he pushed it back again, and they were all looking, going, what's happening? Finally, when they got over to him, they said, hello, Jim. He said, hello, mates. They said, how you going? He said, oh, lovely, lovely. Really enjoying it. They said, we've been watching you pushing the coach up and down. What are you doing? Oh, he said, that's all right. The wife's in the toilet. You see, they've always got memories, haven't they? marvellous memories of the old railways. Oh, these great memories I have, really. You think yourself, you know, when you talk about humour, a lot of people say to themselves, animals now, you never think that animals have got a sense of humour. They have, though, really. Animals, you know, they can talk to one another. I'll give an example. This giraffe is talking, right, to this elephant. And he said to the elephant, Bert, I'm bored. So the elephant said, so am I. Sick a bit, he said, hanging about here. He said, what can we do for a bit of excitement? So the elephant said, well, he said, I've been reading the papers. He said, there's a lot of excitement in robbing a bank. And the giraffe said, robbing a bank? He said, yes, let's get in and rob one of them banks, have a bit of excitement. He said, well, we're going to find a bank. So the elephant said, well, don't worry, I'll go down to town. He said, and I'll stake one out. He said, when I think it's a good time, we'll go in. He said, and rob it. So the giraffe said, fair enough, I'm with you. Well, 2 days later, the elephant said to him, I found a bank. We'll do it in the morning, 10:30. Don't get many people in there. So the following morning, got into town, and the giraffe's looking round the corner. He said, no one about. Let's go in now. So in went a giraffe first, and the elephant followed him. And he looked at the clerk, he said, give us all the money. And the clerk went, and he said, I've told you once, give us the money. And the clerk took no notice, so the giraffe went wallop with his head, knocked the clerk over, snatched the money and ran. So of course, when he came to, the police and everything are there. So he says to the clerk, what happened? He said, well, you ain't going to believe this. He said, but elephant and giraffe robbed the bank. Oh, he said, did they? He said, let him rest a bit, like it's funny in the head. He said, I'm all right. He said, bloody elephant and a giraffe robbed this bank. He said, all right, then in that case, could you give me a few descriptions? He said, I'll tell you, it was a giraffe. He come in first. He said, he was about 16 foot, bloody great neck. He leaned over to me, he said, give us the money. He said, I laughed, and he went wallop with his head. He said, he's done me, hasn't he? He said, all right, that's fair enough. He said, describe the elephant. He said, well, I couldn't describe him, he had a stocking over his head. Oh, dear, mate. Just goes to show that. This parrot, this fella had this parrot for about 20 odd years. And it was sitting in a cage one day, he was having his dinner, and the parrot said, I'm fed up. Sick of being on my own, because he was a good talker. So the fella said, why, what's the matter, Frederick? He said, I'm sick of it, ain't I? 20 years I've been stuck in this cage, you go to work all the time. Nothing for me to do. Keep walking about, I'm sick of the swings. He said, well, what can I do? He said, well, he said, 20 years. He said, why don't you get me a bit of company? Find me a female parrot or something. So I said, well, I'll do my best. So he went down to a pet shop. So you got a female parrot? The fella said, yes. He said, but it's a bit expensive, it's 50 quid. He said, well, I'll have it. So he took it home, he said to his old parrot, Frederick, I've got one. He said, stick it in here. Let's have a look at it. 20 years I've waited for this. He said, well, be a bit careful, cost me 50 quid. He said, leave it to me. So he stuck it in a cage and the old parrot walked all round it. So he thought, I'll be sociable, so he shook wings. So the fella thought, I'll leave them on their own to get acquainted. So he went in the kitchen, he come out of the kitchen, and as he's walking out of the kitchen, he heard a terrible smash on the floor. And he rushed in the room, only to see the cage on the floor, and the old parrot, he's got his foot on a female parrot, tearing the feathers out one by one, saying, for 50 quid, I want you in the nude, he said. Oh, dear. Funny having awkward people, really. Even some of your husbands at some time in life must have been awkward. There was a typical husband. He went indoors about 1 o'clock in the morning, staggered indoors, singing at the top of his voice. There he was as he walked in. What a night, oh what a night it's been, a lovely night. And she was laying in bed, the wife, she thought, he's home. So he staggered in the bedroom, took his clothes off, put his St Michael's on. And he got in bed. She said, I suppose you've been up the club again? Yeah, he said, a lovely time in the club, love. Lovely time. She said, well, you better go to sleep. So he put his head on the pillow. A minute later, he jumped out of the bed, run over to the cupboard, opened the cupboard, got 4 bottles of brown ale out, went over to the bed, pulled the pot out from under the bed and emptied the 4 pots of brown ale in. She said, what are you doing that for? He said, save me getting up during the night. Awkward they are, really, you know. During troubled times, you have awkward people. I was a chap during the power cut. Many of you remember the power cut. During the power cut, he was really awkward, you know. He kept moaning about it all the time. He couldn't do nothing about it. He kept moaning. So he said to his friend, I'm not going out. I'm not going out at nights. It's dangerous. He said, what do you mean dangerous? He said, well, you walk in the dark. He said, the motors come along, knock you clean over. He said, they can't see you, can they? He said, well, why don't you wear something white? He said, what a marvellous idea. So I went out, he bought a white suit, white tie, white shirt, white socks, white shoes and a white hat. And he went out and got knocked down by a snowplough. They're funny people though, really. They ask doctors questions. Fellow went into a doctor, he said, Doctor, I'm not getting no sleep. No sleep at all. So he said, why? He said, I keep dreaming. Dream, dream, dream. Nothing but dream all the time. I don't leave off dreaming. I can't stand it. So the doctor said, well, calm down. He said, what do you dream about? He said, cricket. Nothing but cricket, 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 all the time. He said, don't you ever dream about women? He said, what, Miss Me Charles the Bat? You find children are funny as well, aren't they? Lots of you got children, and they've got a great sense of humour, kids, you know, when they want to come out with something. And you imagine children, a little girl being put to bed by the father. As she's laying there, she said, Daddy, tuck me in like you do Mummy. So he tucks her in. He said, Daddy, cuddle me like you'd cuddle Mummy. So he cuddled her. He said, Daddy, whisper in my ear like you do to Mummy. So he went. So she said, not tonight, I'm too tired. I was a little boy, continually went into a local sweet shop and stole a handful of sweets. Stole a handful of sweets every day. And the chap who owned the sweet shop, come the weekend, he couldn't stand it no more. He said, I can't stand it. He said, a handful every day. I wouldn't mind, but it's me butter Brazils. I'm going to go and see his parents. So he went round to his father, knocked on the door. Father said, what do you want? He said, look, I'm not complaining, mate. He said, I've got a sweet shop up the road, haven't I? Your little boy, every day comes in here, handful of butter Brazils and runs out. I can't put up with it no more. The price of sweets today and all, you've got to put a stop to him. So the father said, call the police. Call the police, have him arrested. He said, well, he's only a little boy. He said, well, I've told you what to do. He said, don't come round asking me. He said, all right. When he walked away, he thought, how can I call the police? A little boy like that. So the following week, in come the kid every day again, another handful of Brazils. Come the weekend, he said, I can't stand it no more. I'm going to call the police. No, I won't. I'll go and see his father again. Went round to see his father again. He said, look, your little boy, second week he's had me Brazils. He said, what are you going to do about it? He said, nothing. I told you, call the police. He said, but I can't. He's only a little boy. He said, you can't? You want to see what he does indoors? When I'm asleep, down in my pocket, 10 bob bit. Mum's asleep, pay a note out of the purse. He said, call the police. He said, he's a delinquent. A delinquent. So he said, well, I will. I'll call the police. I mean it. I can't stand it much more. Away he went. Next week, in come the kid again, handful of Brazils. He thought, I can't stand it. I'm going to call the police. So they called the police. They arrested the kid. Up he come in court. The magistrate after the case said, we will not have this. Stealing Brazils. It's a very serious case. We'll sentence you to 2 days in reform school. Well, unfortunately, I couldn't find any room in the reform school, so I thought 2 days in the normal prison won't hurt him. So I put him in a cell with a fellow who's doing 20 years. And they're sitting there, and the little kid's looking at him. He looked at the little kid, he said, what are you in for, son? He said, nicking sweets. He said, nicking sweets? He said, why don't you do something brainy and rob a bank? He said, I would, but I don't come out of school till 3:30. Anyway. Maybe that. Ever thought about, when you come in the country, you must think yourself when you come in the countryside, it's get away from everything and get away from the traffic. But obviously, when you pass these fields with animals, here you've got a lot of sheep. All night long, innit? Meh, meh, meh. That's how they talk to one another, Well, over the back here, if you trouble to have a look tomorrow, there's a big cockerel. There's about a mile across that field there. There's a bit of a cocky cockerel. He walked about like that. Because he's looking after about 300 hens, see? And at this particular time, he thought, I'll have half hour off. And he's walking around. Well, just a field beyond that, there's a big bull. And this bull was getting right annoyed with this cockerel. He thought, he keeps strutting about like he owns the place. I'm going to have him later. And the cockerel kept looking across at him. He thought, I'll give him answer me back. He thought, matter of fact, I'm so annoyed I'm going to have him now. So he had a warm-up. Got his feet working. He done a tremendous charge towards the cockerel. About 10 yards from him, the cockerel done a beautiful swerve like a toreador, grabbed the bull by the horns and threw him about 400 yards. If that ain't the best cock and bull story you've ever heard, you'll never hear another one. Still on the subject of animals, there was this hyena walking through the jungle. And you know what they're like, these hyenas, walking through the jungle. So a little monkey saw him. He said, oi, shouldn't walk about laughing, He said, the king of the jungle will be here in a minute. He said, king of the jungle? I'm the king of the jungle. The monkey said, leave off. He said, the lion. Mr. Lion, he's king of the jungle. He said, I tell you, I'm king of the jungle. He said, well, I think the lion is. He said, well, I'm not worried about him. He said, if that lion comes here, I'll show you what I'll do with him. Or so the monkey said, I think I can hear him coming. And they could hear, like, from a distance. I had a headache that morning. And the monkey said, I'm going up the tree. He said, I don't want to get involved. He said, I'm going to watch it from up the tree. He said, if you need any help, give us a call. So the monkey jumped up the tree. All of a sudden, the lion come through the clearing. And the hyena saw him and he went, All of a sudden, there was a terrific fight. And the hyena got slaughtered. The lion tore him to bits and then walked away. And he was laying there, the hyena. And the monkey come down. He said, I told you, didn't I? I told you the lion's the king of the jungle. He said, yeah, you might have told me. He said, but you also told me if I needed an hand, you'd come down and help me. He said, well, I heard you laughing. I thought you was all right. Oh, dear. If we talked about stories and go back years, you sometimes take the wartime. In the wartime, people had a great sense of humour, really. And they used to billet soldiers in places. And some of the answers people give to the sergeant, for example. The sergeant turned to the corporal. He said, Corporal, detail some men off. He said, we've got to take them down the village and get them some billets. The camp's overcrowded. So the corporal detailed some men off. Away went the sergeant with him. They arrived in the village, knocked at the first door. Dear old lady answered the door. She said, yes, Sergeant, what can I do for you? He said, madam, we've got to billet some soldiers on you. How many can you take? Oh, she said, I'll have one. So the corporal, he detailed off one man. He thought, who don't I like? And he detailed off. He said, you, Private Cox, inside. In went Private Cox. Quick marks, they come to the next house. Sergeant knocked at the door. Beautiful blonde come to the door. Oh, you should have seen the size of her. 38, 48, 94. With a bit of help, she sat up. And she said, what can I do for you, Sergeant? He said, madam, I've got to billet some soldiers on you. How many can you take? Oh, she said, I'll take all you've got. He said, Corporal, how many we got? He had a check-up. He said, we've got 23 without cocks. She shut the door and went in. Wartime, that is, I'm telling you. Funny, really, isn't it? Oh, dear. Do you find now, lots of people say to us, you know, when they do these surveys, when they travel around, especially in the countrysides, even London newspapers print about them, and they say that people are living to a much bigger age than they ever did before. And one of these London reporters, he went right up into Yorkshire somewhere to find out why people was living to a longer age right up in Yorkshire. And he walked into a little old pub, and all the old codgers were sitting in there. So he walked up to a little old codger and he said, excuse me, sir, I'm a reporter, he said, from London. He said, could you tell me, what do you attribute your old age to? Oh, he said, me, boy? Swimming. Swimming. I have a swim in the morning, swim in the afternoon, another little swim in the evening, and round up with one at midnight. He said, well, that's fantastic. He said, how old are you? He said, 84. Oh, that's marvellous, sir. So I walked over to another little old codger sitting there. He said, excuse me, sir, I'm a reporter from London. He said, what do you attribute your old age to? Oh, he said, me, boy? Running. Running. I have a run in the morning, a run in the afternoon, a run in the evening, glass of Andrews, another run about midnight. He said, you're marvellous, sir. How old are you? He said, 87. So he walked over to a little old gentleman, all wizened up in the corner, all crinkled up. He walked over and said, excuse me, sir, I'm a reporter from London. He said, what do you attribute your age to? Oh, he said, me? Women. Women. I'm out with a woman in the morning, one at lunchtime, one at dinner time, another one about 3 o'clock, another one about 7 o'clock, and round up with one at midnight, and the other one comes round about 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, that's fantastic, sir. He said, how old are you? He said, me? 23. That's right, isn't it, really, how they are? You ever feel like people are when they come over to here for the first time to our country? Americans, for example. We get American people come here, and they think what happens in America happens here. But it's not quite the same. 3 Americans, they walked into Timothy White's. So the first American looked at the barman, standing there. He said, 3 scotch on the rocks. The fella said, scotch on the rocks, mate? Don't sell them in Timothy White's. He said, what are you talking about? This is a drugstore, isn't it? He said, yeah, it might be a drugstore, mate, but we don't sell scotch on the rocks in here. He said, look, don't tell lies. He said, in America, in a drugstore, they sell drinks. He said, now serve us 3 scotch on the rocks. He said, I just told you, mate, we don't sell scotch on the rocks in here. He said, well, look, you might be out of scotch on the rocks. He said, but you sell drink. He said, no, we don't, mate, we don't sell drink. He said, you're telling lies to me. He said, look up on the wall, you've got written up there, drink refreshing Andrews. That's a drink, isn't it? He said, well, yeah, I suppose it is. He said, well, be sociable, we're tourists. If you've got no scotch, give us 3 Andrews. He thought, oh, all right then. So he bought up 3 big fizzy glasses of Andrews. Typical Americans, cheers, drunk them down. The second one set them up again. He said, what a great drink. We're having a bowl. Give us 3 more Andrews. So up come 3 more glasses of Andrews. I said, we're having a great time. What stuff goes right up your nose? Great drink, great drink. Down they went, 3 more Andrews. So the third one, it's a great drink, this. Give us 3 more Andrews. So I thought, all right. Up come 3 more fizzy glasses of Andrews. I said, cheers. And the one on the end just went to drink his, and he said to the chap behind the counter, what sort of kick does this drink give you? He said, well, sort of makes you feel 10 years younger. So the one on the end said, he's right, Matt. I've just done something very childish. Of course, and then we come to the problem today. our children grow up so quickly knowing everything, you know. I mean, look at the fellow who went home, got home in the evening, about 7 o'clock, put his little boy to bed, took him upstairs. When he got upstairs, just going to shut the bedroom door, there's a little boy saying his prayers. Oh, he thought, that is lovely to hear a little boy saying his prayers. And he listened, and the little boy said, God bless Mummy, God bless Daddy, God bless Nanny, goodbye Grandfather. He thought, that's funny. The old man's all right. I was having a drink with him this morning. Ah, the boy's made a mistake. Following morning, telegram, the old man had gone during the night. He thought the boy had a premonition. Fantastic. About a week later, he's putting him to bed again, saying his prayers again. He listened, God bless Mummy, God bless Daddy, goodbye Nanny. He thought, that's funny, the old girl's all right. Next morning, telegram, she'd gone. He said, fantastic, the lad's got premonitions like that. About a week later, he's putting him to bed, listening to say his prayers again. He said, God bless Mummy, goodbye Daddy. He thought, I've had it. I'm only young. He's been right twice. He thought, I'm not going to bed. Ain't going to get me while I'm asleep. So he laid awake all night. Terrible sweat. Next morning he got up to go to work. Went to work. He thought, I won't get on the bus, might be in a smash. I'll get the lolly man to take me over. So the lolly man took him across the road. He got in work, and all day long in work, couldn't do a thing. He kept thinking about it all the time. Finally, come time to go home, he went home, got to the door, opened the door, and there was his wife. He said, God, blimey, love, what a day I've had. She said, what a day you've had? What about me? Got up at 6 o'clock this morning, opened the door, and there's a milkman dead on the doorstep. That's a thing that happened to anyone. Problem. So he eventually found a Cockney, and he walked up to him and he said, excuse me, Mac. But they call everyone Mac. He said, excuse me, Mac. He said, but could you tell me where Buckingham Palace is? And this fellow looked at him and said, yeah, matter of fact. He said, I could. He said, well, which way do I go? He said, well, you go straight up here. He said, and you come to a place called blah. And you go right, ran, and you come to a place called Hyde Park. And you go right through Hyde Park, and you come to a place called the Mall. And you go, can't make your bloody mouth ache, this joke. You go right through the Mall. He said, and you'll see Buckingham Palace on your left-hand side. He said, well, thank you very much, that's really nice here. He said, just a moment. He said, you come from America, didn't you? He said, that's right, all the way from the States. He said, I thought so. He said, tell me something. He said, how big is America? He said, well, it's a fantastic big place. He said, you put this country inside America. He said, I thought so. He said, how big is New York then? He said, well, it's a fantastic big place. He said, you put London inside New York. He said, I thought that and all. He said, how many people live in New York then? He said, well, we've got millions of people in New York. He said, well, we've got a bloody lot of people in London. How many people you think there is living in London then? He said, well, I'd say at a rough guess, 9 or 10 million. He said, well, what the hell you want to pick on me for then?
Thanks for the memory. That's all for now. Or as they say in the cartoons, that's all folks. Bye.